Alrighty. And so, Denim, I just hit the recording. I'm going to go ahead and, as the last folks kind of join us, go ahead and dive into the content. Guys, I'm on the East Coast, so I'll say good afternoon to you. I'm Tyler Jefcoat. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My partners at A2X Accounting, Denim, and actually had a call with their CEO, Paul, last night. Have a great deal of respect for this company. They do a lot of wonderful things for their customers, and to be honest with you, I think we're a power customer because we have, lots and lots of A2X accounts that we use. And so as Dim and I were connecting last week, we just thought this would be a moment to kind of pause whatever the normal content that would have been delivered and just kind of speak to the need of the hour, which is that our businesses are reeling. I mean, literally, I have CFO calls almost every single day with Amazon sellers, and this is so dynamic that it's kind of changing real time. Every time I look at Amazon, every time I pull up an account, something is changing related to the availability specifically of FBA outbound. I mean, that's happening very, very real time. And so we're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about how you can use better financial practices during a down economy to ensure that if it's possible that you come out on top. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about myself. That's me with my hair grown out, right? I've got it today. I got my shortcut. Have a beautiful wife, Emily, and two beautiful daughters that are 5 and 7. We're learning how to homeschool our kids right now, and I'm grateful to live right down the street from my office. So I walked here today to have a better, actually just have less kid interruptions for this recording. I've had the privilege of being at the helm of a couple of different entrepreneurial startups. One was a home healthcare agency that went from 0 to a little over 120 employees in 4 years. Had the chance to sell that company 2.5 years ago. And then I started this company. I'm an accountant by trade. My MBA focus is actually kind of more on the finance. I'm a real geek for mergers and acquisitions when it comes to driving profitability. And so a seller accountant only does two things. We provide bookkeeping and we provide fractional CFO services for e-commerce sellers. And so my customers are asking a lot of really critical questions right now. What do we do? How do we navigate the times that we're in the middle of? And here's the entire webinar, right? Just kind of in a couple of phrases. We need to take a deep breath. Recessions are going to create obstacles. We need to plan for those obstacles, but they're also going to create opportunities. And we need to be on the front end of being right on the cusp so that when the window opens back up here, whether it's in a week or in a year, we don't know that. There's no one that can come on a webinar and speak to how long Amazon's FBA operations are going to be slowed down. As Dim and I were talking about before you guys joined the call, how effective a stimulus package, we don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. But I do know that lots and lots and lots and lots of wealth is going to transfer in the next 18 months because as humans, our human condition, right? We make really quick emotional decisions and other people make better decisions and end up, as the market improves, as competitors that aren't working the way they should be working in the e-commerce business get kind of swept away. There's gonna be a tremendous opportunity for us. And so our job is to focus on what we can control instead of, there's a couple of inappropriate ways that we could respond to coronavirus or to an impending recession. One, I would propose to you, one inappropriate way to respond would be to freak out. We're going to talk about this in a second, but there's never been a more important time for leadership than when things get a little bit rocky. By the way, I didn't have to Google very hard to still find pictures of 2020 current spring bake trips. That's where this photo came from on the right-hand side. If this is any of you, I apologize, but this is dumb. This is another inappropriate response to coronavirus. Like let's do the little things that are smart to protect our families and protect ourselves, to plan for the future, and but let's not freak out. And so I want to just kind of mention this to you. I deliver a lot of content to sellers, and there's a pile of very normal reasons that sellers struggle. Generally, it has something to do with their model. It has something to do with their products don't solve enough of a problem that they can sell it and sell it for enough of a price to keep some margin. They have a hard time managing PPC, which is an additional challenge, by the way, because of the FBA coding changes. I'll show you that here in a minute. They have too much overhead. They don't have enough cash. So these are normal problems. These are not problems that have all of a sudden emerged because of coronavirus or because of a recessionary kind of gravity towards recession for our economies. But adding to these normal stressors on a business, we're having some new ones that have popped up here in the last couple of days. Supply chain security has never been a more important discussion. If we were, and a lot of our customers are 100% FBA dependent, because FBA is the most, and it's not even close, the most efficient means for getting product into your customers' hands. Well, a week ago we were reeling because FBA inbound shipments are being limited for a lot of categories of products. And then as of yesterday or the evening before yesterday, outbound FBA shipments are also being limited. And it seems as though Amazon is doesn't have a real rhyme or reason to how they're assigning which products are being demoted in the Prime eyes. And all of a sudden we're seeing dates. I'll show you here in a second, but we're seeing dates that are the end of April, beginning of May for delivery estimates. And so it's kind of, what do you do about it? If you're in one of these categories, travel, hospitality, some of the apparels, anything that falls away from core spending, kind of more towards discretionary, a lot of those products are struggling. There's another, for every product that is struggling, there's also categories that are really succeeding right now. I mean, I've had many of our customers that are having record-breaking months, and their biggest challenge is, when am I going to run out of goods, right? How long can I continue to sell this much? When people get fear, they have the emotional, I don't know if you guys have been keeping an eye on the market. I haven't looked at it today, but talk about irrational responses to economic conditions, where the market in America at least has tanked over the last week. And then I think I had the single day record, if it was yesterday maybe, of increasing in a single day. It's amazing how we as humans, the human condition, we make very emotional decisions. And then obviously cash flow challenges that probably already existed with sellers are being exacerbated because they're having to wait. I wanted to show you this. I went to this today. So here's a seller, and this is the same seller. It's the same store. It's the same category. And yet, if you look closely at the screen here, the second product and the fourth product still have that Prime logo. They still say free delivery by Saturday, March 28th. Now, the first and the third products, if you look at the little tiny fine print where that Prime logo would have been, they now say free delivery for Prime members. But if you were to click into those two listings, they actually are estimating a delivery date of April 22nd, April 23rd. And so this is interesting, because this is Amazon taking direct algorithmic action to depress certain listings. And in other words, they're trying to control demand until they can get their fulfillment centers back up to full staffing. And we don't know if this is going to change tomorrow again. It could. Everything seems to happen pretty quickly with Amazon, or if we're going to be in a position where we're holding for the next few weeks. We also don't seem to understand why Amazon picks some items over others. I mean, when you look at this screen, I guess I'm thinking, well, the first product, I guess we're not going on a picnic anytime soon. So let's algorithmically make the picnic pack less attractive right now, and maybe we're not going to the beach, and so it's just a little bit all over the place, right? It's creating some unusual circumstances, honestly. And I'll speak to this one quickly since we're on it. I'm wondering as a CFO, if for the listings that are getting, I don't know what to say except for demoted, right, to this free delivery, but it's happening a month from now. I'm wondering if we shouldn't either look at an FBM strategy pretty quickly, or decrease advertising budget on those listings, because we're going to get some conversion collateral damage over the next couple of weeks if we don't. Next thing I want to show you here, I want to talk about leadership for just a minute before we dive into really the meat of this presentation. Is going to be five really clear points. They're really actionable. I want to give you on how you can navigate this, the uncertain times. So you look at this boat here. This is actually really funny. So what I was trying to illustrate here when I Googled this, when I shamelessly Googled this illustration and grabbed it earlier today, what I was trying to illustrate is that it's really easy to drive a ship when you're, 100 miles from shore and the seas are blue, they're calm. And then I come to find out this is actually the Diamond Princess. So this is probably like a bad example, because it's where there's a lot of coronavirus as of recent. They're finding out how long this virus could live on inanimate objects within that cruise ship. But what I thought about when I saw this picture was, wow, yeah, the captain needs to have great controls. This is a huge ship. You don't want to crash it. But the captain isn't nearly as important during this moment as he or she is during this moment, right? All of a sudden, the channel gets more narrow, and you become very, very dependent in a moment like what we're seeing on the screen now on your visibility. Can I see the right data so that I can make decisions quickly? You really learn a lot about your ship. Can your ship turn quickly enough? And then you really look for leadership. And so I think my overarching message to anyone who might listen to this content today is not only don't freak out, but be very, 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 be very careful to focus on leadership. What message am I speaking to my family? Am I speaking life? Am I being human for my family, or am I creating more fear, right? And for my employees or for my customers. And so you learn a lot about yourself as a captain when things are narrow. I want to show you this other picture. It's a terrible photograph here, but can you imagine trying to turn this 300+ foot ship into this narrow channel? And again, it just takes a very different kind of pilot when things get tight. And so, I want to give you a couple of just really, really practical things here. You do need to be planning for struggle. We don't know how long things are going to be tight. We don't know. For a lot of us, our entire supply chains are completely seized up. And this is the moment while you have time where you need to run some analyses. You need to really take a closer look at the margins you have on your products. You need to, what would it look like if my sales dipped 20% for a prolonged period of time, or 75%? I talked a little bit about backing off advertising for the ASINs that are being kind of algorithmically de-emphasized in Amazon. It's a good time to look at your ASINs and see, are there any of these that are struggling right now because of Amazon trying to control demand on them? I don't want to spend additional ad dollars to drive traffic to an ASIN that's not going to convert. One of the things we're going to talk about here in a few minutes is, when should you explore bringing on a 3PL partner, right? I mean, a lot of us have now woken up to the reality that we don't have the security in our supply chain that we thought we had. What I would posit to you, and this is one of the discussions we need to have in the Q&A, but if you don't already have a 3PL partner and you have some volume, you're a larger seller, whether you should get one right now or not is going to be more dependent on how strong you are as a company. In other words, if I'm having to ration cash because I don't know how long I'm going to survive with making my debt payments, I'm highly leveraged, boy, I'm going to be really hesitant to take on any additional expense to split any of my inventory up unless I just have no other options. It's different if you're a stronger seller, you've already built the business case for having a 3PL, and now is the time to take action. Well, I've got a little bit of extra time. Let me go ahead and take action on that. The third thing you might think about is, all of us are pretty good at forecasting what we think our sales are going to be, although for the next few months, your guess is as good as any guess, right? But we need to take the additional step of turning those into actual forecasts for cash flow, right? We need to turn them into a cash flow plan. Cash is going to be king. It's going to be king in terms of identifying opportunities. Things are going to go on sale. Some of your struggling competitors are going to be available in the market in the next few months because they run out of money, and you having some cash is going to make you a very powerful partner for them, frankly, to help them and help yourself. But I'm just going to say this really quickly. This is kind of the all caps portion here. There are some emergency lending programs out there. There are great banks and great credit options that are emerging in the market. Please do not go borrow a bunch of money for a bad business model. Be objective enough to take a look into your business, look at your products, make sure that if you were going to view this as a zeroed out game, this is a brand new moment in time, would I place these investments in my business, and do it because it's the right reason to do it? If you just need runway, then you probably need to look to borrow money sooner than later, because I would imagine that credit markets will get tighter, kind of like they did in 2008, 2009, as if there is a recession that is prolonged, as it continues to prolong, getting cash is going to be more difficult. But please don't go borrow a bunch of money if you have a losing model. Find ways to pivot the model first. Obviously, we may have to cut expenses. I just want to talk about this for a minute, because these are some of the practical things that have come out of my discussions this week. If we have a lot of salaries on our team, this is challenging. How do we figure out how to lead our team, how to be human in the midst of a recession? And I just want to say this: the worst thing that could happen for my employees and for your employees would be for us to go out of business in the next 3 months because we don't manage our shop properly. And so my advice to you is, don't avoid hard conversations. Definitely be open and transparent with your employees. It's the only way to really garner respect from them is to ensure that they know exactly where you are. It's okay to tell them you're afraid. And it's also okay if you have to furlough someone or lay them off to do the right thing for the business. And just be aware of whatever the unemployment laws are in your area. It could have an impact on what the best strategy is if you had to reduce someone's hours. For instance, there are some markets where actually laying somebody off is a better option than reducing hours, because they wouldn't in America, be eligible for some unemployment benefits if they had part-time work. But you have to look at it. Every case is different. And this is going to be a moment to really assess how strong is my business. Before we dive into the 5 points here, I wanted to tell you a quick story. Yesterday, I was going to go right down the street here. I was supporting a local bakery that I just felt the need. It was kind of an altruistic moment. Like, man, I really want to support local businesses here. And I'm in Athens, Georgia, just east of Atlanta. And what I loved about this bag is, so these ladies are working hard trying to rescue their business. They're struggling because they're a walk-in bakery in a city that's a largely shut down. And here's what they do. They gave me a bag. That was a freebie. And then they put a roll of toilet paper on top of it, as you can see here. And it made me think, this is this seller of products getting extra creative, going the extra mile to try to generate value for me as the customer. And I just really appreciated it. I just wanted to remind you that people are going to become more human as we kind of continue living our lives at our homes. And don't stop being creative, because a lot of your competitors are not. They're going to sit on their rears and wait for things to get better. I had a mentor recently say his favorite form of patience is actually persistence. I don't want to sit around and hope things get better soon. I want to actually take decisive, incremental action towards my goals, so that when the window does open and the economy lifts or Amazon reopens and our products flow more normally, that we are best positioned to take advantage of the opportunities in front of us. I think that Kiki's Bake Shop did a great job of that. All right. So here we go. The best thing that I can help you focus on here are 5 really, really practical tools for understanding your business better from a financial perspective. I'm a CFO after all. And let's just walk through them. Let's dive into the content. It's really important to me that we save a bunch of time here at the end for Q&A. And I know Denham's going to be looking at the questions. And so let's get into it. So the first thing that the best sellers out there are doing, they are keeping score. There's never been a more important time to have clear visibility into your financial performance. This is why I love partnering with A2X. They make taking the Amazon data and getting it in an accrual fashion on your P&L easier than it can otherwise be. I want to understand the impact of refunds. I want to understand any changes that might be coming in my FBA fees. I want to be able to see my different sales channels and how their performance is trending, because I'm actually seeing a lift in some of our Shopify shops as Amazon has struggled to get more of their products delivered on time like they used to. And so you may find that some of your ancillary sales channels, that there's an opportunity to invest additional marketing dollars in those channels over the next couple of months. Let me show you what a typical P&L looks like. My team did an aggregate study. It was about 110, maybe $115 million in total e-commerce sales. A pretty high emphasis on Amazon for 2019. Wanted to share some of the data with you here. First, I'm going to show you the resellers, then I'll show you private label. But this is what we saw. This was kind of the average of our resellers across the board. 2.3 million in sales. 73% of their sales came from Amazon. And then you can see this is a pretty standard reseller business model here. They tended to be larger, by the way, on average than the private label sellers. They had closer to 50 points going towards product COGS. They were obviously very low or almost no advertising, but their post-advertising gross profit, which this is a metric that admittedly I made up, and I use it with every single one of my CFO clients. Understanding what your gross profit is as a seller tells you very, very little. It's not very helpful. And so we recommend taking gross profit and augmenting it to capture advertising expenses so that you understand how your product blend performs after ads. And so you can see that across the board, the PAG, or post-advertising gross profit for resellers, was at about 19%, a little less than 15% in overhead, left them with pretty low net profit margin of 4 1/3. They've got to be lean and mean. There are, by the way, this is the average across all the sellers that we talk to, but you know what? There are resellers that are making tremendous margins because they're able to deliver their products without a lot of overhead. They're able to capture a lot of that post-advertising gross and keep it. So for what it's worth, there's your resellers. Here's your private label owners, kind of brand owners in general. And you can see they're a little bit more dependent upon Amazon at 85%. They tended to be a little bit smaller. They obviously had much higher margins. They're securing their products for 28 points instead of the almost 50 points that you saw here on the reseller diagram. And it left them, and you also notice, by the way, that the advertising is much, much higher for your brand owners. It should be. The fundamental competitive advantage for somebody developing a brand is that they are able to address a customer need in a unique way. They're solving a problem, but they're going to be capturing margin through their supply chain and then investing that margin into advertising so that they can keep as much as possible. On the whole, they were able to keep that post-advertising gross landed about 25% for the private label sellers, and their overall operating profit was at about 11.33%. So their access to capital, especially during a recession where they can grow, develop the right products, is critical. Their ability to stay as lean as possible, although I would say this, the private label sellers had a little bit of an easier time staying lean than the resellers. I want to show this to you a little bit differently. And we're kind of going to talk about the this question: am I profitable enough? Is my product blend profitable enough? If you've never read this book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, I would recommend it to you. He has these 4 steps that they would propose to us in terms of how to really manage our business as well. I found as the healthcare company I sold, as we crested about 50 employees, I lost complete control over being able to manage my team until I was able to focus on the things my team could take action on, have a clear scorecard, clear dashboards, clear access to data. And so I want to kind of turn your attention on a lag measure is the result. Like I might say that I want to lose 20 pounds. I'm sure my wife would love that, right? But that's a lag measure. I can't take a whole lot of action on losing 20 pounds. The lead measure is I want to eat less. I want to exercise 4 times a week. And even eat less is a very poor lead measure. A better lead measure would be I'm going to eat smaller snacks, or I'm going to make sure I have apples on the table, or I'm going to eat less cookies, whatever the real practical, actionable item is. This is how you want to lead your teams. And so when we look at a P&L for an Amazon seller, these kind of cream colored areas are what we tend to focus on: gross profit, post-advertising gross, and net income. But those are the lag measures. That's not where we need to focus our energy. Our energy actually needs to be focused on these lead measures, the things that we could potentially make phone calls to our supply chain about. We think about product COGS. That is by far, it's not even close. It's the best opportunity for our sellers to gain more margin, is in either developing better products or renegotiating their supply chain terms. Advertising is similar. If it's not your strength, if it's not your wheelhouse to manage advertising, you may want to consider hiring someone that can, or outsourcing to an agency that is strong at it. Overhead, similar. When things get tight, you got to look at what you're spending money on. These are the lead measures we need to be able to process as sellers. And so let me just kind of give you my perspective as a CFO, right? I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. This is a happy CFO. This is a picture of me. It's me, bald head, smile, right? If you can keep the combination of your advertising budget and your product COGS, so you see that was 10% for advertising, 30% for product COGS. If those added together are 40 points and you're a private label seller, I'm really happy with your business. That's a really strong combination of those two numbers. And if your overhead is less than 15 points, I think that's another really good benchmark to work on. But guess what? It doesn't have to look like this. Your product blend might look more like this second picture. This person has 35 points in product. So instead of it being 30% for COGS, it's now 35% for COGS, but they're more efficient on the advertising front. And so again, that 35 points for COGS plus the 5% in ads leaves them only having to budget 40% of their sales numbers towards those two critical categories. I always try to view those two categories in concert. If I'm going to have to advertise, or maybe a better way to say this is, if I want to have the luxury of advertising more than my competitors, I need to find margin in the products so that I can have that additional margin to invest in advertising. Even resellers who tend to be a little bit more efficient on FBA fees, which is why I highlighted that, the fulfillment, a lot of times they're leaner in that regard, but they can still have a really happy post-advertising gross because a lot of times they don't have to advertise. But a lot of my resale clients get this product COGS. It's actually not 45 points. It's 50, 55, 60 points that they're paying for the product itself. That isn't going to be sustainable, especially as cash flow gets tighter. Let me show you what I feel like is the happiest, right? This is the the pearly whites, baby. This is really, really what I love to see on the P&Ls. And again, I'm managing, it's probably close to 100 million in Amazon sales that I'm the CFO for annually. And we're looking for this picture right here. I want to have so much margin in my product, closer to 25 points, maybe even 20, where I can afford to outspend my competitors on advertising if I have to. The other thing that I love about this particular picture here is that the overhead is actually lower. It's at 10 points or less. Our industry leaders are keeping close to 20% in net profit. So if you think about that bottom number down there, it's 15 in this little simple illustration. But literally, when I did the study, the top 10% are having a post-advertising gross of closer to 28, 29%, if you kind of looked at this middle number, and are keeping at the end of the day, after overhead, almost 20 points. That's an amazing story for an e-commerce business. It's aspirational. Now, let me show you when I have meetings with my clients and things aren't going quite as well. Here's a sad CFO. For a typical Amazon seller, if I have to have an increased cost for my product and an elevated advertising cost, I end up in a position where my post-advertising gross is so low that I can't afford to carry the normal amount of overhead for an e-commerce seller. And as a result, I work my ass off all year and don't make any money. Another example of a sad CFO would be, for a reseller here, this is what I was talking about a minute ago, lots of volume, lots of credit risk, but spending 50 cents on the dollar just to secure the product. Even though I have a zero for advertising, if I can't keep my overhead crazy low, it's not uncommon for the resellers to make very little money and they work really hard. So those are the sad pictures. Again, I'm going to get micro here in a minute. This is on a macro level. Maybe just to pause here for a second. The only way you could possibly answer the questions on the screen right now, how do I compare to what I'm seeing here, is if you've taken the time to present your accounting in an accrual fashion, where you can look at a given month, like, right now it's March, right? We can look back at February and say, what were the actual sales that I was able to complete during the month of February, and what were the actual cost of goods sold that happened? What was the actual advertising expense for that month? And so this is, again, another pitch for using tools like A2X that allow us to take the Amazon data, split that data properly, and create what I would call an investor-grade set of financials. If you don't have this kind of visibility into your performance, that is your practical to-do coming out of this webinar, is now that you have extra time, it is time to go get your books in order. There are firms like mine out there that will do the books for you. I'm not the only one. But it's time to gain this level of visibility, because as the channel narrows, right, I showed you the picture of the ship, as the water gets more shallow, you're going to need to know exactly what's happening in your business, and you cannot afford to fly blind. You got to remove the blinders and know where your business is so that you can know, what's my challenge? Is my problem logistics fees? Is my problem cost of goods sold? Is my problem advertising? I'm not going to know unless I have an objective way to look at that. And so the second thing that the strong sellers out there are doing is that they stay really focused. Quote from Dad here: spend your time where you're making your money. I feel like my dad, who's a Marine, is a real estate guy now. He's said that to me 1,000 times. If I'm and this little graph here that you see here is all about knowing your strengths as a business model. RA is retail arbitrage. I've got wholesale arbitrage. Private label, an IP-based or patent-based private label brand, or a legacy brand. And my point in showing this chart is that to the degree that you have to secure your product at a higher price, you can't afford to advertise as much, and you can't afford to screw up your advertising. Your margin for error is much lower. Your risk tolerance for bad advertising should be a lot lower. And so you got to know your business model. You got to focus where you're strong. I say this because if you're a really good reseller right now and you're thinking, let me dive into private label, that might be a good idea. There's opportunities in the market for those kinds of expansion, but I wouldn't do it unless you're strong. I wouldn't do it unless you've stress test your business and you can financially weather things for a few months. This kind of goes back to my thoughts about getting a 3PL. If you have a business case in line already to hire a 3PL, I would do it. There's a lot of them out there that will take your business, especially if you're larger. But spending money to implement another logistics tool that you probably should have implemented 3 or 4 months ago, if you are lean on cash and you're trying to decide whether to do that or whether to advertise your products or whether to do other things that you might need the money for, I'm going to continue to focus on what's got me where I am right now, in terms of where I put my money. Understand your logistics, understand your funding, So I would just say focus is important. Don't go off the deep end right now. Whatever made you great, continue to do that thing that makes you great. I want to show you right now, this is the third thing. This is going to be a really practical nugget here. It's never, so we talk about the macro. You need to understand the full performance of your portfolio, the full performance of your sales channels, but you also need to have the guts to assess each of your products individually. And, this is a little bit of a crude illustration here, but I'm going to show you this because you can do this in 10 minutes today. If you go to Amazon, you go to the fulfillment reports, one of those reports on the left-hand side of the screen is called the fee preview report. And if you download that CSV, quick nugget, by the way, if you decide to download any CSVs from Amazon, before you do what you're seeing on the screen here, immediately save it as an Excel file. I spent like 2 hours working on one of these for a customer a couple weeks ago and about lost my junk because I didn't save it, and the CSV won't allow you to do colors, won't allow you to have different tabs. But once you download that fee preview report, this is kind of a poor man's version of a dashboarding tool like a Managed by Stats, Helium 10, Sellex. There's a bunch of them that are out there. You can look at each of your SKUs. You can understand what you're selling it for, what the fees are from Amazon, and then you can load in your cost of goods sold for each of these products. You can estimate what your advertising budget is. Now, this is difficult. Ads can be challenging to do manually, but if you have a small catalog like this person does here, you might know, on average, I spend 10% on ads for this product. On average, I spend 25% on this product. You can do that kind of analysis. And when I say SDE here, what I'm really talking about is kind of the post-advertising gross, right? This is that PAG number, the post-advertising gross profit. And so on the screen, I don't know if my cursor's over here or not, but for this first product, you're making $32 and some change every time you sell it after ads. That's a really exciting number, as long as your sale price isn't $40, right? So the percentage, 22, I'm happy. What you're going to find, and this I've had this with every single CFO analysis I think I've ever done, you're going to look at your entire portfolio and you're going to find a couple of losers. And there may be a good reason for them being losers. You may look at this second product, which is losing us money every time we sell a unit, and you may realize, oh, this is a launch product. We're just getting this off the ground. This one's unusual, and we're expecting it to recover in the next 2 months. If that's the case, great. But as you can notice with this client, I went back into their business reports and just pulled a volume report and put literally, I just want to put how many units I've sold of each of these SKUs over the last 30 days. And that second SKU that you see on the screen there sold 1,250 units. That's my top selling SKU, and I'm losing 37 cents every time I sell it. Oh boy, that's a bad story. And so I think what's really important to do, especially as things get tight, is to objectively, not like it's my baby. I love my kids, but I'm not going to treat my products like I treat my kids. I'm going to hold the products accountable to performing and to generating profitability, or I'm going to reallocate those resources to higher opportunity products, ones with better margins. By the way, if you're, we've looked at this on some other slides here, but if your post-advertising gross isn't at least 20%, 25% is fine. But if it's not at least maybe 18 to 20%, you may want to look at whether you have the right products. You can see several of these on this screen. This was just a made-up example I made, so it's not a great example. But a key to do for you as you leave this webinar, if you haven't done this already, if you don't already have an automated tool, is download the fee preview report from Amazon, from Seller Central. It's under, so you go to reports, fulfillment reports, fee preview. You're gonna request one as a CSV. You're going to very quickly save it as an Excel file before you start manipulating the data. And then you're going to eliminate a bunch of the columns you don't need, and you're going to build this analysis. I promise you it would take you 20 minutes. It's not going to take that long. If you have more than these 10 SKUs, you probably want to look at picking up a piece of software like a Helium 10, Sellex, Managed by Stats, something like that, that helps you get this level of visibility into your SKU's performance. Because underperforming SKUs aren't going to cut it if I'm running out of cash, right? Here's the next really practical tidbit I want to bring to you here, which is when things get tight, you can't be sloppy with your cash flow management. You've got to be proactive, and you need to turn your P&L forecast, which most entrepreneurs are actually pretty good at this. Most of the sellers I've worked with are pretty decent at the top few lines of this little spreadsheet I have here. By the way, this is a free template. I don't have it somewhere where it's easy for you to download it, I don't think right now, but if it's, if you want to email me, I'll have my email address at the end. It's just my first name, Tyler @Seller Accountant. I'm glad to share the template for cash flow planning if you want to. But what I tell my clients is we've got to build a P&L what are we going to sell next month? What's going to happen the Prime Day? And I'm recognizing that this is largely BS for the next month or two because you don't know when FBA is going to come back online. I get it. Look at the micro analysis for your SKUs and still do the best you can with some different scenarios based on what you think your cash flow is going to be. And here's the reason. If you look down, I've had this seller also add some loan payments. And I am a big fan of not overcomplicating when it comes to forecasting inventory cash, at least on a macro level. As you get larger, you got to get really micro with it. But if I know that I want to sell $68,000 in goods in the month of March, that means I'm going to have $41,000 of inventory in my account. And I'm going to have to pay for that inventory normally in advance before I actually get to sell it. And so just build a model that takes into account that I'm going to have to buy my inventory 6 weeks in advance or 8 weeks in advance. And then you can come to the conclusion, if I started with 50 grand in cash, oh crud, this red blank at the bottom right, I'm going to be negative in my checking account at the end of May. This is really, really important information to have back in January and February when I can actually take action on it. By the way, the IRS, although they're giving us some relief right now, they still like to get quarterly profits, estimated tax payments, which is why there's a negative that you need to capture there for investing activities. But look at the difference here. This is the same exact model. All I've done was this seller proactively was able to go get a line of credit in February, knowing that cash was going to get tight at the end of May, and therefore we've kind of staved off the cash flow crisis. I know this is an oversimplified example given where we are as a marketplace right now. But my comment to you is don't wait, be proactive. Build a cash flow plan now while you have time. Run some scenarios that are kind of ugly. What would happen if half my business disappears for a month and a half? What would happen if Amazon doesn't turn back on FBA for the next 2 months? What would I need to have in terms of cash reserves in order to survive? And if you believe, if you're betting on your products, you go back to this product analysis, and if my products are strong, if my underlying business model is good, then now is the time to go find that cash that's going to help me weather the storm for the few months while things get turned back on. So build yourself a cash flow plan. If you want to borrow ours, there's nothing magical about it. It's just a spreadsheet, but I'm glad to share it with you. Tyler@selleraccountant.com. One other thing I want to mention in terms of cash flow planning, it relates to understanding your liquidity. I've got a couple of balance sheet ratios on the screen here that if you've never heard of, I just want to bring to your attention. If you and I were to have a call today and you were feeling really, really stressed out about your cash position, I mean, really stressed out, you lost sleep last night, I can almost guarantee you it's because your quick ratio is really low, probably less than 1. So if you were to take all of your cash and immediate Amazon receivables, like you see at the top of this screen, so, the 221 here in my bank accounts, I've got 39,000 Amazon's going to pay me in the next 14 days. I'm ignoring inventory for right now. And if I were to take that total and divide it by all of my current liabilities, which was 71,000 for this client, I have a quick ratio of 3.66. What that means is I have 3.5 times as many dollars in the account as I have immediate debt. This guy's not feeling a ton of pressure because of cash flow. If you were to look at the opposite, where, maybe you had, and I've seen this over and over again, where you maybe only have $71,000 in cash and your, short-term loans, accounts payable, credit cards are at 220, 230,000. All of a sudden your quick ratio is going to be like 0.3, which means I only have 30 cents on the dollar at my disposal to meet my obligations. If your quick ratio is lean, it means you're undercapitalized. You don't have enough cash in your business to not frankly have to pray for the next paycheck to come in, right? And so if you have an unusually low quick ratio and you believe your business is viable, that's a great clue that you need to go find some cash to try to get that ratio up closer to 1 or a little better. Obviously, days of inventory is going to be another challenge for our customers during the next few months as Amazon locks down inventory. That's a real pain. But just understand, having an accurate understanding of how much of my cash is tied up in inventory is really important. So that's that for the cash flow planning. And then the last point I want to make here before we kind of pivot to Q&A is, guys, it is so important to have perspective right now. You've got to have visibility so that you can navigate through narrower channels. Didn't need to have that kind of visibility when the ocean was blue, when there wasn't anything to run into. But right now your boat's going to get tested. And having perspective, and really what I mean when I say that is having people around you who care about you, who have expertise, having your team. I wholeheartedly believe, a guy that I would really view as a mentor says often, your network is your net worth. And that is never, ever, ever more true than when the market gets tight, when people are afraid, when you're having to make difficult decisions about your company. And so if you're not in a mastermind, I'm not talking about just a hack mastermind, although those are really helpful. If you're not in a round table like mastermind with other entrepreneurs who can empathize with what you're going through from a cash flow, from a profitability standpoint, who are consuming content like this. There's all these webinars this week. I would love to be on every single one of them, just to listen, just to understand what's current in the marketplace. Because if I'm honest, I don't know how my customers should react to Amazon's FBA switches. I don't think anyone does. I think if you have a good FBM strategy, if you already have your warehouse or 3PL, yes, you want to pivot in that direction. But ultimately, we don't know how Amazon's going to treat the algorithm through this. And as a result, I need to constantly have input from people around me who care about me. And so I just want to advise you. I have a group, unfortunately, in Atlanta that's remote for sellers. It's called the Sellers Roundtable. Reach out to me if you're interested. We may join it. We may create a second group. This group's full. We don't have any room in our group for any more sellers. But if you're a 7 or 8 figure seller, even if you're a smaller seller, find a group that is going to give you counsel as we navigate the next few months, because it's going to be wild. It's going to be weird. And nobody can tell you how long this is going to last. Nobody can tell you what the absolute best move is. Really, the best move is to plan for the worst, hope for the best, and have your eyes open for opportunities, because a recession creates lots and lots and lots of brand new millionaires. It does. As competitors who don't have the strength to survive are weeded out, those of us who are doing things right in our business, that are solving real problems for our customers, that have really thought through our businesses and are ready to scale, we're going to reap the benefits of this. And so another way to build perspective, by the way, is to read. There's a couple of books that are kind of some of my favorites. Profit First, if you're really concerned about the profitability of your business. I think McAlowis does a great job of articulating how to protect the profitability of your business. I've already mentioned 4 Disciplines of Execution. These other business books related to how to build structure, how to scale. That was actually going to be my talk at Prosper yesterday, was if I'm stuck at $1 million, if I'm stuck at 2 million, what are the things that need to happen in my business to get to 10 million? And you couldn't do better than reading Predictable Success, Traction, and Making Money is Killing My Business or Killing Your Business. Those are 3 great books. I also am just a big fan of military leadership. I love Jocko's books. Extreme Ownership's a great one. But think about this. This kind of goes back to the beginning of this talk. When things get difficult, when the channel gets narrow, if you're thinking about it from a combat perspective, my dad was a Marine. If bullets start flying, people are going to look to the captain. They're going to look to you as the CEO of your company. They're going to look to you for decisive leadership. They're going to look to you for clarity of thought. And man, it's going to be so important that we lead with humanity, that we treat the people around us the way we would want to be treated. It's going to be so important to use the data that's in front of us to make the best decisions we can for our entire teams, to be decisive, to take ownership of the problems that are around us instead of sitting around waiting for things to happen, to take proactive steps in that direction. And so I just encourage you, the world is not ending. It would be inappropriate to freak out. It would also be inappropriate to not take action right now as your business is transitioning, because the cheese is moving and the winners are going to be different in the next few months, I believe. And so kind of stay tuned, stick with your friends, find those counselors around you, read books, read articles, go to webinars. And then just remember, here's my big ask of you. What is your ambitious, audacious goal for where you want your family to be at the end of this recession, if there is a deep recession? Where you want your business to be, where you want your team to be, where you want your customers to be. And the question is, what are you going to change about the way you approach your business to get there? Because what got you here isn't going to get you there. Your current habits, James Clear, another book I didn't have on the screen, but Atomic Habits by James Clear is an outstanding read. It's one of the best newsletters I've received is his Thursday updates, Atomic Habits, check it out. But his great comment was, your existing habits are perfectly suited to get you where you are right now. If you want something different, you're going to have to make changes in the way you lead your organization. My encouragement to you is to be proactive in making those changes, understand the data, surround yourself with good counselors, and just be proactive. Don't wait until you're out of cash to plan for cash flow. Don't wait until you're busy again to do the things that you could be doing right now, tending your shop, training your employees, encouraging your families. Don't wait. That's what I would say. Don't wait. And so I want to kind of create some space here for Q&A. Would love, didn't know if you want to step in. Love to chat with anybody who wants to chat.
Yeah, cool. Hey, thanks a lot, Tyler. Such an incredible presentation, and you just covered so many really interesting points there. We'll kick off with the first question here from Andrew. So is there a list that we can access in which categories, in which we can view categories for FBA inbound is limited?
Yeah, for the inbound challenge, there is a list. I don't have it in front of me. But yes, if you go to your Seller Central homepage and look at recent articles, there was one from last week. I can't remember the exact date. It might have been last Tuesday or Wednesday. That was basically articulating. I don't think it was an exhaustive list, by the way. I think it was a list of some of the more common ones. Let me just say this in general, when it comes to, because just in case there's some clarity needed for these questions, there's two different FBA challenges right now. The first challenge is, I think, with this particular question asker was articulating, which is we can't send certain categories of goods into FBA. Essentially, whatever Amazon views as being non-essential, if their workforce is limited, their folks are risking their lives to go into a fulfillment center to send us items. They're going to prioritize items that are more staples, that are more medical, food related, that are more medicinal, and they're going to de-emphasize items that are not considered that. And so I don't have the exact list in front of me, but yes, there was one in Seller Central.
Cool. Thanks, Tyler. Next one is from Paul. I think it was when we were looking at the accounts, and he was basically pretty impressed with some of the gross margins of typical accounts that you see. Gross margin under 40%, post advertising GM under 30%, and net margin under 15%. So is this something like typical that you see with a lot of the businesses that you work with?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me go back to that data that I think you might be referring to. Let me say this. This picture here is probably most indicative of the top 10% performers in our aggregate study. So again, the data that I'm showing you in all of these slides is a set of average data based on I think it's close to 120 million in 2019 sales. And so I think this picture that you see here is going to be most, this is kind of our top 10%, the top performers. Wasn't just a handful, it's a large number of sellers that were doing this at scale. I just normalized it against $1 million sales number to try to make the numbers easier. If you're asking what's normal for sellers out there, let me back up a little bit more. For private label, this is the best answer I can give you to that question. This is literally across whatever it was, 50 or 80, I don't know the exact number. The number of sellers that were private label or brand owners here, this is the average. The average seller in the study was 1.6 million in sales, and their exact expenses are as I have described here below. And then when you talk about a reseller, this again is the exact data that came out of the study. And so I don't know if that answers the question or not, but yes.
Cool. One more question here from Jeannie is, what is 3PL?
Yeah. Hi, Jeannie. I hope you're doing well. I think I saw her name there. Yeah. So a third-party logistics partner is a warehousing operation that can fulfill items for you if, for instance, FBA is a 3PL. If you don't have a native warehouse where you are picking, packing, shipping goods for yourself, then you are outsourcing that function of your business to a third-party logistics company. Obviously, Amazon is the largest third-party logistics company in the world. They're amazing at it. So we all use FBA for our products. But if Amazon weren't your first choice, and if you had a little bit more scale in your business, you would look at a company like Deliver. There's several of them out there that actually are providing that service for you. So they could be fulfilled by merchant, but not from your house because you don't have a warehouse. I hope that helps.
Cool. And I swear I haven't planted this one, but Shibu has asked, what does A2X do and how does it help?
Oh man, that couldn't have been better, Denim. I love it. Yeah. So listen, as the owner of an accounting bookkeeping firm, we do 100% e-commerce. We have assessed tools from all walks of life. The reason I spend so much time with Denim and with Paul and Ashley and the other guys at A2X is that this tool just freaking works in terms of taking those super complex data coming out of Amazon, where they only pay you every 14 days. Let me show you. I'm gonna go back and give you some real data so we can look at it. You know, Amazon is only going to pay you every 14 days, but more than half the time that payment spans a month. And so it's impossible to do what I asked you to do at the beginning of the webinar, which is to know the exact amount of sales you had last month, the appropriate amount of refunds and fees and cost of goods sold that should have been on an accrual basis associated with last month. If you try to do that manually, it is very difficult to juggle two competing interests. On the one hand, I need it to be accurate, right? I need to be able to actually reconcile it against the bank statement because there's a single deposit that's going to go into my account. A2X solves that problem for you. And on the second hand, if I look at the Amazon reports, Amazon, if you were to try to pull February numbers from Amazon, you could find three or four different numbers for what your sales actually were last month. And so again, actually reconciling that sales data against a bank transaction is impossible unless you have a tool that does it the way A2X does it. There's no better spend of money. And I'll take it a step further. This tool is so powerful that we bake it into every accounting engagement we have with Amazon sellers. I will not take an Amazon seller on as a customer at Seller Accountant unless I can purchase A2X for them. And we just eat the cost of it because it is that valuable. It just makes sense. And I want to say this is a little bit parenthetical, Denim, but if you guys are looking to figure out how to set up A2X, my company recently published a course. I put it in the chat for the webinar here. There's a direct link to it. Literally hot off the press. I've been recording these videos all year, I feel like, but I've created a discount code, A2X 2020. You can get a 50% off if you want to learn not just how to set up A2X, but how to run your e-commerce accounting correctly, start to finish. Amazon, Shopify, reconciliations. We do focus on QuickBooks Online. So if you're zero, it's not gonna be quite as helpful. But anyone on this webinar gets 50% off. Feel free to take us up on that. We'd love to serve you that way, even if you're not ready to hire an outsourced firm. But I just want to affirm again, Denim, your tool is outstanding. It's a very good tool. And yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you. Yeah, we've got a couple of new ones now. One from John is, given the unknown delays in Amazon receiving at the moment, would it be wise to stop sending stock and go FBM?
Yeah, this is a complex question because it depends on how much you have. Like, if I'm assuming the fact that you're saying stop sending stock, it means that you aren't just stuck with a container on the water from China and your only option is FBA. It means you have a warehousing operation. I have a couple of friends in the space that are very dialed in that are recommending a short-term shift to FBM. So for what it's worth, they are choosing to de-emphasize the FBA listings in favor of shipping the goods directly, John. But to be honest with you, I don't know. The answer to the question is 100% dependent on how long Amazon struggles to hire those 100,000 bodies they need to bring on to make their fulfillment centers strong again, and how long coronavirus is a major public crisis in America. But let's just say it's safe to say right now that last mile fulfillment for Amazon has been impeded by the Postal Service and FedEx and their issues. And the first mile fulfillment out of FBA has been impeded because Amazon doesn't have the bodies in their 100+ fulfillment centers to do the job right now. And so if you have the flexibility of fulfilling by merchant, that's not a terrible strategy. Whether it means you should stop sending into Amazon, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking about this real time here, so I don't want to give you bad advice. I would say if your product is being subverted by Amazon, and what I mean by that, let me show you the slide I showed early on here. If you're one of these, where a portion of your catalog is now being algorithmically de-emphasized in Amazon, that tells me that you probably have stock in Amazon until mid-April. And I'm wondering if you shouldn't, John, at least slow down those orders until we get some more information from Amazon. But if you're considered a critical item, you're selling medical supplies, toilet paper, supplements or anything like that, then I would be inclined to continue leveraging FBA because it's more efficient.
Cool. All right. Kevin asks, what would you classify as overheads for businesses which are not Amazon only?
So great question on overhead. Let me get back where I actually have a P&L in front of me so I can show you what I'm thinking. So let me just say this from an accountant's perspective. I'm taking financial data and I am reconciling that data directly against cash. And so anything that flows out of my business that I haven't already captured on the top half of this P&L, product securing, advertising, everything that's below that, everything that isn't that, salaries, software, rent, utilities, contractors, outsourced providers like seller account, right? It could be anything that may fall under that other expenses. Now, the one thing I am excluding from this is interest expense. And the reason is that when we did the aggregate study, there was a pretty big standard deviation between sellers that had access to good capital and sellers that didn't in terms of how much they were spending on interest. And so for what it's worth, when I say non-advertising overhead, I mean everything that goes to your bottom line that isn't interest expense. Yeah. Now, if you aren't just Amazon, I understand. And this is, by the way, this is the challenge. Let me just articulate this. Some of my largest reseller clients struggle because they have to have a bunch of bodies in the warehouse. They need more pallets. They need more boxes because they're doing their own fulfillment. And it is difficult to keep your overhead lower. And so my response to that is that you can't afford that higher overhead unless you have enough margin in your products that you're delivering enough value to your clients to carry the overhead. And so that may be a good instance where you need to make some short-term cutbacks. Yeah, but that would be my comment on that.
All right, thanks for that one, Kevin. So John's also asked again, what delays have you noticed in FC processing? What are you seeing?
Well, the first evidence of major wholesale delays, John, I just noticed yesterday. I was on calls with clients, CFO clients, looking at their performance, and all of a sudden we noticed that that picture wasn't actually the one I showed you, but a picture very much like that, where some of their products were all of a sudden not being promised the same FBA promise. Let me show you what I'm talking about here so I can give you the data again. Or as a consumer, I'm an Amazon Prime consumer. We buy almost everything on Amazon. We're like the worst of the worst on this. But my consumer psychology changes tremendously when I don't see this branded Prime badge on some listings, but I see it on other listings. And so that's the biggest change. The first thing that happened was that they changed the window dressing. This, what you're seeing in front of you on the screen here, started happening. Some of the units would have the traditional Prime badge, along with Amazon's traditional Prime promise, which is 48 hours or whatever it is for your market. But other products that normally would have been Prime, they're sitting in FBA right now, are now in that little fine print saying free delivery for Prime members. But guess what? It's now not going to get delivered until April 24th, April 25th, April 22nd. I saw a bunch of those. So that's the real practical thing that is starting to happen on the back end. That isn't just window dressing, is that frankly, customers just can't get the stuff. And so like if I'm buying a dry bag for my wife and it's her birthday in April, which her birthday is April 17th, I'm not going to wait until April 22nd to have them ship me this dry bag if I'm having to wait that long. Now, if I can get it right away, I'll buy it. If not, I may have to search on another website to find the dry bag. And so I think that's the kind of thing that may impact consumer behavior. We just don't know how much. Frankly, I bought something for my camping gear last week. And I just went ahead and bought it and I said, hey, I'm not going to be able to deliver this until April 22nd. And I didn't care. I went ahead and bought it anyway. I felt like I was kind of doing the right thing, supporting this seller. But I don't know how many people are going to act like I acted instead of being like, I can't afford to wait for May to get this product and to go ahead and purchase it somewhere else.
Cool. Hey, thanks for that, John. And cool. I think let's just have a look. We've got a couple other questions here. The one from John, just following up on his particular case around his case for supplements that they're able to send. Right now, they're having units on the way, but holding back sending more due to stock issues. So just sort of ocean and air shipments. John, maybe I'll get Tyler to follow that one up with you privately.
Sure. Hey, and John, please reach out to me. I'd love to grab a call and just talk shop. Love to hear more about your situation. I have several supplement sellers that are in the same boat. It's a challenging situation.
Yeah, very much.
And I saw Jeannie's question here and the other.
We've actually got quite a lot of good questions through specifically around just like shipments.
I missed that. Did I say it again?
Yeah, we just got a lot of questions coming through, just relating to shipments and delays. And
Yeah, I mean, I
suppose
don't know. I mean,
the biggest
Jeannie,
issue
to
everyone's
look at,
facing at the moment.
Jeannie, to address your question here, I don't know if Amazon can be trusted to open the floodgates when they say they will. I feel like I'm viewing that the same way I'm viewing my kid's school system right now, where the state of Georgia is still saying, hey, at the beginning of April, things are back to normal, but I believe that's absolute garbage. That's just me personally. I don't think that the state of Georgia is going to open up schools. I look at Amazon's data the same way. Amazon has a little bit of a selfish incentive to give us what they believe the realistic input was last week without giving us real-time updates. I would not be at all surprised if it's delayed beyond Amazon. Wasn't it April 7th or something? There's some initial delay for non-critical categories. I would not be shocked if that delay carries beyond that initial estimate, but I don't know.
All right, well, cool. Well, hey, if there are any other questions that come through, I'll just directly through to me at denim at a2xaccounting.com or at Tyler at selleraccountant.com. We'll wrap this one up now, and but what we'll do is we'll get the recording of this, put it onto YouTube, pull together a little bit of a blog post and sort of send it all out to everybody, and including those resources as well. Specifically the Seller Accountant Teachable course as well that Tyler has got there with a 50% offer
Yes.
for anyone that uses a code A2X2020 if they want to basically get a handle on how to do their own e-commerce accounting and set up A2X. So thank you so much, Tyler. It's a shame we couldn't do this in Las Vegas, but gotta do what you're gonna do.
Yeah, literally, Denim. We're the real
well,
victims
thank you very much,
here.
everybody.
We were going to be grabbing a beer 2 nights ago, and now we're doing this from our homes, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, we still have a beer at our desk, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Tyler. Thank you very much. We very much appreciate it.
My pleasure. You guys be well, stay safe, make proactive decisions, and don't lose heart.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key. All right. All right. See you, everybody.
See ya.